So season 3 is multiple people in beds?
Yes.
Sex positive culture.
It's my body to give.
Are threesome gifts a thing?
Taking a bath.
I like your bed.
Horizontal.
This is Horizontal with Lila.
I'm Lila. I'm horizontal in Los Angeles, California, and my pronouns are she and her.
I'm Dan. My pronouns are he and she, and I'm horizontal with Lila.
And I'm Jiminica. My pronouns are she and her, and I am also horizontal with Lila.
Hi. Welcome to Season 3 of Horizontal. This is the podcast of intimacies recorded while reclining. It's still slow radio. It's still consensual eavesdropping. It's still us lying down, sharing secrets in your ears. But while the first 2 seasons had me lying down with only one person at a time, Season 3 will often add another guest to my pillow. I'll be lying down with people who are in some kind of relationship with one another, and I intend to encompass as many types of human relationships as I can. They might be friends, family members, teammates, mentors and acolytes, business partners, lovers, exes, metamors, co-parents. You know what this means, right? That's right. This season is going to be a Lila sandwich. My first 2 guests of Season 3, Dan and Jiminica, are a manager and her client, as well as friends. Jiminica is a sex educator, queer media consultant, sexual assault expert, and trauma specialist. She is widely studied and deeply informed. Her work comes from the well of her own transformations, her personal navigation through profound pain and culture shock after culture shock, the fierce desire to protect others from suffering at the intersection of sexual assault, race, class, privilege, and trauma, and years of professional training. She is the host of the podcast Trauma Queen, a mini-series about healing for assault survivors and their allies. She speaks with survivors, therapists, partners, educators, and experts. Her podcast is a gift, a resource for survivors and those who love them, and everyone with a beating heart, really, with each episode providing actionable, practical steps. She teaches without teaching, educates without educating. You'll see. Find Jiminica on her website, traumaqueen.love. That's trauma, not drama, just like the title of this episode, spelled TRAUMAQUEEN. And you can follow her on Twitter and Instagram at Jiminica, which is spelled JIMANEKIA. Dan, also known as Danielle Owens, is a queer femboy activist and Jiminica's manager. Danielle also manages 2 other previous horizontal guests, Stevie Bobby, the go-to lesbian sexpert on YouTube, episodes 42 and 43, and Megan Tonjes, singer-songwriter, and the accidental leader of the Booty Revolution, episodes 24 and 25. Dan uses the pronouns he, him, as well as she, her, interchangeably. Let me model how that might go for you. He is the CEO of gender-fluid clothing label and inclusive marketplace, Radimo, which plays with gender the way I love to see gender played with, and focuses on directly supporting clothing made by queer, trans, Black, POC, plus-sized humans, women, and disabled small business owners. Radimo's pieces are modeled by folks with different body types, skin tones, and gender identities. You can find the whole line on the website radimo.la. She engages in all sorts of glorious gender fuckery on Instagram with the handle @BoyGodKing, on YouTube as Danielle Owens Reid, Danielle with 2 N's, and Reid, R-E-I-D, and her forthcoming book, From One Cult to the Next, is a memoir about ending toxic relationships and the healing that occurs thereafter. Many of you know that all the part 2s of each episode are available exclusively to patrons of $5 a month and up. I've revamped my Patreon tiers this week with shiny new perks, and the upgrades will all go into effect next Friday, April 12th, alongside the release of part 2 of this conversation with Dan and Jamanika. If you become a patron of $5 a month in the next 7 days, you will be grandfathered in with access to the full Horizontal and my gratitude for being an early patron of the Horizontal Arts. After April 12th, the first tier of patronage will be $10 a month, and it will include access to all the part 2s in the Secret Patrons Facebook group with behind-the-scenes access, along with a monthly video with curated intimacy tips. And if you adore the love poem of the month, fret not, O patron, my patron. It will be part of the video. The perks for $25, $50, and $100 a month are even more delectable and include my favorite new perk, in which I will plan a monthly date for you. A solo date, a friend date, a romantic date. Check patreon.com/horizontalwithlila for all the saucy details. Patreon is spelled patreon.com/horizontalwithlila. I'm also running a sweet little special offer. If you become a $10 a month patron by the end of April, I'll send you a handwritten thank you love note and a bit of Horizontal swag, maybe a magnet, maybe a bumper sticker, maybe something else, in the actual mail. I still love getting mail as much as I did when I used to send bedazzled letters back and forth with my friend from summer camp in 1995. Also, I've been told that my handwriting is, quote, ridiculous, astonishing, and like a font. These are actual reviews with no prompting and no exaggeration. In this first part of my episode with Dan and Jim, we tell our origin stories, which include loneliness, divorce, cancer, sex positivity, intimacy, braces, bio dads and adoptive dads, relocating 10 times by the age of 9, latchkey kids, alcoholism, bipolar disorder and intervention, manipulation, therapy, PTSD, advice columns, gaslighting, inclusivity, gender neutrality, queerness, microaggressions, racism, sluthood, LGBTQIA in the Black community, rape, eating disorders, being an empath, burnout, sex ed, and how we came to possess our superpowers. We cover a lot of ground in this one. We'd better get into it. Come lie down with us in Los Angeles, California. This is unprecedented, I will have you know. This is brand new for season 3. I am so excited and a little bit nervous, a little like nerve-sighted to do it. So I thought maybe we could do it like this. If you were a comic book movie, what would be your origin story that brings you to
This is deep.
the career you have now?
Whoa.
I don't know comic books.
Like the
No, just like, it's really just origin story.
the career that we have together as our relationship or separately?
just present day.
Just
the
present
present day.
career. Okay. Wow.
An origin story.
If you want to simmer on that, I'll start someplace else.
Do you have an origin story?
Give us
So,
an example.
You want mine?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you do one first.
Okay.
Oh, this is good.
Follow
Okay.
the leader.
So, my parents met at a child psychology conference in Brazil. My mom didn't speak any English, and my dad just kind of like gestured to her to ask her out.
Is this a real
Essentially.
story, or are you making this up as a comic book?
No, this is really my
Oh,
my
my
actual
My life is now
Wow.
boring.
No, not at all.
Wow, this is really sweet. Okay.
This is my actual origin story.
Oh,
Okay.
you meant like a real one.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
cool.
yeah.
Okay, we're back. Mine's sad.
Oh, okay,
Got
thank
it.
goodness.
Mine's gonna be sad though.
Oh,
but comic
okay,
books should
great.
be sad sometimes.
Definitely.
Okay,
They
cool.
are always
back.
But
sad.
it's all the formative, you know,
Cool,
like what
yeah.
makes you you, how did you get this way, kind of a
Dope.
thing.
Okay, I'm back.
Oh, okay, I'm so excited. I'm so glad. I was like,
Yeah.
oh no, did I really? I've
I was
stumped
just
them on the
like-
first one.
I'm just like not a inside my head visual person. Like I'm creative in so many ways, but like coming up with a whole comic book, I was
Oh my
like,
God.
I was
listen,
so stressed. I was like, oh, I don't know.
listen.
I'm so sorry. It's just, I feel like I just put on so
You're
much
just-
pressure.
You're
I really
used to talking to nerds.
Is that what's happening?
well, that's definitely true, but
I mean, we're nerds in our own.
We're different kind of
right.
nerds,
Yeah.
though. We're not comic
I'm
nerds.
dirty.
I just wanted a better way to say, you know, give me a little life background. You
love
know?
We've made this
Now
so
that you've
difficult
said
now,
it-
Dan. This
Now
is
that
so
you've
damn
said it and
difficult now.
explained it, I'm like
I'm ready.
obsessed. I'm
I'm
on
ready.
it. I'm like,
I'm in.
get through your story so I can tell mine.
Okay. Okay.
No. I want to hear your story. Sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm down with that. I'm glad you're excited to tell yours. So my father is an Italian American from Brooklyn. He's third generation Italian. He's got a really strong New York accent. He was very handsome at that time. My mom said that he looked like Omar Sharif. And he had, you know, big curly brown hair, and he like dressed all 70s.
I'm into it.
And he was
Yeah,
sounds
I
big
love
big
it.
mustache.
Your dad sounds kind of cute.
He was cute at that time.
He holds up.
Now he looks like Father Christmas. But
Tis the season.
I mean, he's adorable. It's a different vibe than the Omar Sharif version of my father, you know. But my mom was very taken, and my mom was really pretty, and she was a blonde at that time. She's descended from Russian and Romanian Jews who emigrated to Brazil to escape the badness. And they were both obviously interested in psychology. She was a social worker. And so they made this romance with very little common language. And I think my dad said they knew each other for 2 days before they decided to essentially enter into a relationship with each other.
Wow.
Wow.
And then
When you know, you know.
they wound up having a marriage that lasted 20 years or something like this. He says this. I actually recorded with him a few months ago.
cool.
I'm
That's
really
so
excited.
cute.
Except I couldn't get horizontal with my dad, so it's called sitting relatively upright with my father.
That seems fair. That seems fair. I like it.
So my parents got married. He imported her to the States, and they couldn't have a child. They really, really, really wanted a child. And they tried and they tried and they tried different kinds of treatments, and they tried all the things that they could try. And then they stopped trying, and they had a baby.
Whoa.
And that baby was me. And so
Whoa.
they call me a miracle baby. And they were very, very, very happy. We were living in Brooklyn. And then they bought a house when I was 1, moved to Long Island, Freeport, Long Island, which is a suburban, kind of strange place. I was a really intellectually and artistically gifted child, and kind of an outsider, and very lonely, and I didn't have any siblings, but they couldn't have another child. They had me when they were 41.
Wow.
And it was like, that was it, you know. And she had a miscarriage after that, and then they just decided to stop trying. So I'm an only child. I've got a lot of memories of holidays of being like, there's nobody to play with me. Like, there's just nobody around. Everybody's with their families, and my family's, you know, half of them are Brazil and half of them are not necessarily that close. So my mother, when I was 7, 8, 9, had colon cancer. She had a large part of her colon removed. Related to this is her manic depression and her bipolar disorder. She was on lithium for a very, very, very long time.
Intense.
Yeah. And they were very fighty. My room was on the left-hand side of the house, and their room was in the far right-hand corner of the house. And I could hear them yelling in my room, I remember. My father had a wood shop in the garage. My mother would be angry that he didn't give her enough attention. She wanted more attention, and he would be working all day, and then he'd come home and he'd go into his garage. So there's a pattern of wanting more from men than they are offering reverberates throughout my story over and over and over and over. My mom survived, and when I was 12, she divorced my father. I still think he hasn't forgiven her, but he's
good job on her.
Glad that they're not together.
Yeah.
You know, but he still has some animosity. My mother has no animosity. She wishes him really well. And she took me and moved me to Florida. At first, they said I had a choice with who I could live
That's
with.
so stressful.
Oh my
God.
So
goodness.
stressful.
A 12-year-old.
12 years old. Yeah,
Like,
12
I'm just
years
trying
old.
to stay in
Oh my
school.
gosh.
Oh my God.
Get some snacks.
Trying to survive. She was like,
Yeah.
getting made fun of because I cheered for one boy on the basketball team, and everybody's like, "Ooh, Lila likes you," and then he's all embarrassed and, you know, like this is
you're like,
my
I have
7th
stuff
grade
to
life.
worry about. Like, I
I have time
can't.
for this. Trying to go to the dance.
Also, it's like your options are Florida and Long Island, and
Oh
you're
my
like,
gosh.
could they be more different? Like,
And I didn't know anything about Florida. I didn't want to go to Florida. I wanted to stay and become captain of the cheerleading squad and shit. You know, that's what
Right.
I wanted.
but you're also having to choose between your mother and your father.
And then they said, that was a mistake. You don't have the choice anymore. And I was like, what?
Oh.
I got super upset.
Okay.
You had
And
to
so
go to
then
Florida.
I had to go to Florida with my
What
mom.
part of Florida?
It was
Doesn't matter, does it?
Seminole. It doesn't really
No.
matter. It was super segregated. I didn't understand. I was in a really diverse community, and then I showed up and there were just all these white people, and I was like, where is everybody? They don't live there. They don't live in that town. And so it was just like, it was awful. 7th grade, 8th grade were just tremendously heinous, kind of like girls turning on me, eating lunch in the bathroom, you know, this kind of thing.
Sounds like my
Right.
7th grade too.
Mm-hmm.
Plus braces.
Yes, I had braces. I loved my
late.
braces. I got braces again as an adult because I loved them so much.
Oh, cute.
Yeah.
I got braces late. Braces were really cool in my middle school.
Really?
Yeah, 7th grade, it was like, well, because the rich kids had braces. So it was like really cool. And I didn't have money until my mom married my dad, who ended up adopting me, which was like 8th grade. So then I got braces after everybody was getting them off. And I was like showing up to school, like smiling with my braces. And everyone was like, no, we did that. Like,
Oh, we're
we
done
did
with
that.
that.
Yeah, like, yeah.
Oh, no.
We all have totally different brace relationships.
I love braces.
brace relationships.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
man.
Not
I
in
just
a fetish
felt-
way though.
I felt so snaggly.
Ugh.
Yeah, I really did.
I
not.
was thinking about getting them again the other day.
Okay,
Not
but this is
feeling.
your comic
Say.
book.
Right. So little Lila thinks that she is just the ugliest girl in the world, and she imagines how she's going to be able to scrape the bump off her nose so that she can be pretty,
Oh.
and doesn't understand, doesn't have anybody really see that she's beautiful, that's meaningful, because your parents saying it doesn't necessarily compute until I go to summer camp in the summer of 1995, and it's Smart Kid Camp, and I'm like, oh, people think I'm cute. People think I'm pretty. This is amazing. This is amazing. And I have my first kiss, and then I get in trouble for sneaking into the boys' dormitory after hours, and I almost get kicked out of camp.
Look at you, fun.
Okay.
Which I was terrified about then. I'm kind of really proud of now. And we speed up here. I go to an arts high school. I don't have much interaction romantically this whole time. I give my first blowjob and receive my first oral sex experience when I'm, I think, a senior. Yeah. And then I don't lose my virginity until I am 19 in college, because my mom had always said, you know, when you want to, like, I hope you won't in high school, but when you want to, we'll get you condoms, we'll get you birth control.
Oh, that's so nice.
It's a beautiful thing when people love each other, you know. Like,
Sweet.
Wow.
and then so I didn't feel the need to rebel against. So I the way I think of it is that permission precluded transgression, because it wasn't hot and sexy for me to rebel. It was just like,
You're like, she supports this anyway.
yeah, so it's cool. So so I can choose when I want to.
Yeah.
And actually, it was like, there was at a certain point where I couldn't give it away. Like, nobody would have sex with me because I was a virgin. And then, I wound up having sex with somebody in college when I was 19 who was 29, and I met him on nerve.com, and it was really just not very good. And I was like, oh, maybe sex just isn't all it's cracked up to be. And I only started kind of recognizing much later, oh, lube and chemistry makes a difference, and skill makes a difference, and position makes a difference, and then when I had the revelations of like, oh, this is what they mean when they're writing the sonnets, like this,
Right.
like this is what it's about. Well, that was big. I go to college for theater, graduate. Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Go to Brazil, learn Portuguese. Mom gets really sick. She's in the hospital. She recovers. What else is important? I think just the obsession with, like, understanding how other people's relationships are. Like eavesdropping and watching people interact with each other and watching people who are a couple, and that longing for connection and longing for intimacy comes from this just childhood loneliness. This kid who wants to have people to play with, who has to lure a little boy into the hammock in order to get him to kiss her. That's the one thing I remember.
And this is like the first booklet of your comic book origin story.
I think this is like
the first booklet,
this is the
and
origin
then
story.
you like discover your superpower, which is your career, right?
Right.
And then we launch into like the podcast series, or
Yeah, kind of. I think that's like the third installment if we're talking about a trilogy. Who wants to go next?
Dan.
oh, that was rude. I was gonna say Jamanica.
You gotta be fast. Gotta be
You
quick.
really did that.
I know I
Okay,
did.
Dan. Okay. All right. So my mom had me really young, 19 years old.
Whoa.
My Nana had my mom when she was 16 years old. This is Mobile, Alabama. This is the South. And my Nana takes my mom as a baby from Mobile, Alabama, and escapes her abusive family, moves to North Carolina. My mom grows up, has like a couple different dads throughout, et cetera, has me at 19 with my bio dad, who's in the Air Force. They're in Hawaii, so I was born in Hawaii. Yes, always felt very connected to the West Coast. I think it probably has something to do with that. I was born in Hawaii at 3 months old. We flew to California, did a cross-country road trip. I've probably lived in like 11 different cities by the time I was 9 years old. And my mom and bio dad got divorced when I was like a baby. They got divorced like pretty quickly, and I didn't see him or like understand really what was going on. Obviously, I'm a baby, and then like eventually I'm 5 and my mom has a new husband. Then I'm like 7, we're down in South Carolina, and there's a custody battle because my dad's like, she won't let me see my kid. And my mom's like, you're not paying child support. And he's like, I'm in the Air Force. It literally comes out of my paycheck. You have been getting child support from the beginning. What are you talking about? Like, she's not healthy. She's not making great decisions for me as a kid. Also, we're poor. We're poor as heck. And she's a runner. Like, every time a bad situation happens, which is a lot because she grew up in an abusive family. My Nana grew up in an abusive family. So she's just cycling through men that are shitty, abusive in all different ways, physically, emotionally, etc. And
Generational trauma.
I stay on my own. I'm a, what's it called? An only child. I'm an only child, and I'm on my own all the time because my mom also, like, you're poor, you're in the South, you got a kid. My mom's working 3 jobs at a time.
You're a latchkey kid.
I'm a latchkey kid, yeah. So I'm 5 years old, and I have the house to myself. And also, we don't have like a ton of food, so I'm creating Mwah. The weirdest shit. I tried to make ice cream by putting ice in a Cool Whip. Like, I don't know
I
what
like
I'm doing.
it.
I'm like,
Creative.
we have tuna, but we don't have bread and we don't have mayonnaise. So I just mix mustard with tuna and eat it out of a bowl. Like, I'm making up stuff, which is great because now I'm older and I like all kinds of weird shit, which works out. So 7 years old, because this custody battle happens, I have to go live with my dad, his new wife, and my new little sister in Germany on an Air Force base for a year. So plucked out of South Carolina, Myrtle Beach, in Germany for a year. And I'm like, okay, I talked to my mom on the phone maybe twice the whole time. She's engaged to another guy.
Wow.
Yeah, I come back. She's no longer engaged to that guy. Whatever, some years pass. She gets married to my now dad who adopted me when I'm like 12 or 13, like I mentioned before. So, subplot that starts to really surface now is that my mom's an alcoholic and she's bipolar. And from ages like 13 to 17, each year it gets worse and worse and worse. And it goes from me being like, why does my mom get to be angry all the time? And then she, like, I can't be pissed off about this restaurant. Like, it goes from that kind of thing to me being so afraid to live with her. But she and my dad get divorced, split when I'm like 17. And of course, I like have to stay with her because she's my mom. At the time, he hadn't adopted me yet. So it's just like, none of it's good. I have like a couple of friends who are really supportive. It's just a scary, scary environment. And I don't really understand it because also when you're in an environment that is that scary and the person isn't physically abusive, nobody's really doing anything to help you. It's like you can be emotionally abused, verbally abused, like manipulated, trapped for years, and nobody's doing anything because they're like, well, she's your mom. So, and at the time, so many of my family members were pissed off that they weren't speaking to my mom. And I'm a teenager from like 17 to 22 or whatever. I'm like a teenager. I don't really know how to handle this situation. At 21 years old, we decide as a family to have an intervention. She's on her fourth husband at this point, which when she got engaged to her fourth husband, that would have been her seventh engagement. But fourth husband, we decide as a family to have an intervention. It doesn't go well.
Who else is involved in the intervention?
My Nana, my two aunts, myself, and her husband. And somehow my dad, who's been divorced from her for a few years, keeps getting dragged into this because my family keeps conference calling me. They're telling me, like, I'm the only person who can save her. I'm the only person who can make her better. Like, I'm the only person who can, et cetera, et cetera.
And you're also a child.
And I'm a child. I'm a full-on kid. I I had sex for the first time when I was 19 years old. It was with a woman that was like, when I was like, I'm bisexual, I guess, and then eventually came out as a lesbian. And my mom was like, but don't you want to get married and have kids? And I was like, oh boy, like maybe I do. That seems like a different conversation. Maybe it's not a different conversation. My mom was also like really upset I didn't want to wear a dress on her wedding day, fourth wedding day. And I'm like, I wore one.
I've worn dresses.
I wore dresses.
You've done this.
2 other weddings, I wore a dress. Can I wear a pant at one? Anyway. And also in this time too, she's doing a lot of lying to me. She's telling me she's sober. She's like, I'm sober. I'm not even drinking. And so that's fucking with me too. So this is just like gaslighting USA. Mm-hmm. And also she's prescribed lithium, I think later, but so throughout this time, 21 to 28, I'm in a string of relationships that are not very healthy. You know, one, it's not healthy in the way that she's just like very jealous, won't let me hang out with any of my friends because all my friends are pretty. She's convinced they have a crush on me. So I lose a lot of friends during that relationship, that kind of stuff. Another one where we're just like constantly fighting, like screaming at each other. And she's telling me like, you know, couples fight and we scream at each other because we love each other. And like me trying to break up is me giving up on the relationship, like this kind of stuff. And I'm also get into a business partnership with someone that I'm in for 6 years who kind of manipulates the things that I say and takes my ideas and presents them as her own and starts to kind of like try to meld us together in a way that is just like stealing my identity a little bit. And so all of this is happening. And I start therapy at the age of like, how old am I now? Like 27, 28, I start therapy. And my therapist is amazing, incredible. I've been going to her for 5 years. She's changed my whole life, saved me. She explains to me that I have PTSD and kind of goes through like what that means and how I can see that in my life. And I start to understand like my relationship with sex and like shame and how I'm like so ashamed that I like certain things that are kinky because I dated someone who was like, oh my God, you used a strap on. You're so fucking weird. Like all these things that have been just drilled into my head. Meanwhile, all this like other underlying stuff is that the world fucking sucks. And it really sucks for queer, trans, Black, POC, Native communities, disability communities, and I'm learning so much because when I'm in therapy, understanding how I'm being gaslit by my business partner and my mom, that is helping me realize what's happening to everyone else in the world. And I'm like, okay. And it's obviously not like an all-at-once revelation or anything, but I start to just talk about it more. I start talking about it way more. And because I'm talking about like, you know, removing yourself from toxic relationships, I get out of this business. It takes me 1.5 years. She has me kind of trapped and she keeps kind of rearranging what I'm saying so that my girlfriend says the best gaslighters gaslight themselves. And that is why I saw that truly happen.
How?
When someone is so convinced that like, they're like, why would you leave me when we built this thing together? And in your mind, you're like,
did we?
I'm like, this isn't what we built though. Like we were answering advice using our life experience. And another part of my journey too is people would call us out and they would be like, hey, you guys don't come from a trans experience. And when you spoke on this, you said that wrong. And I would be like, oh, okay, cool. Thank you. And she would be like, oh my God, we have to make sure to research everything we say. Like we can't get anything wrong. Let's like make sure we post a picture on Trans Awareness Day. And I'm like, I don't think posting a picture takes away from the fact that we aren't educated on a life experience. And someone would be like, hey, I'm from the Black community, and like you guys speaking on like answering a question to someone who's wondering about Black families, like that's not cool. And I would be like, that makes fucking sense. Like let's like hire someone who's Black to answer questions so that we don't have to like leave like a whole community out. And she's like, okay, well, we need to make sure to like instead of accepting it, she would be so offended, so frustrated, and so mad, and just want to figure out what awareness day we could put a picture up for to make sure people know, like, look, see, like we like highlighted one person on Asexual Awareness Day, so that means we're inclusive. Whereas I'm like, no, how about we like give jobs to people or like hire a writer who's asexual or like, I don't know. It's like so hard to remember the details, but
my understanding of gaslighting at this point in time is when someone speaks to another person in such a way that diminishes their understanding of what happened, of the truth, that intimates that they are crazy or unstable. And so you're talking about them, the best gaslighters, gaslighting themselves. I'm so curious about this.
Just making their reality
seem like a reality
so real to them that they're not even trying to make you think. Like if my business partner would come to me and be like, do you want to leave on Friday morning or Saturday morning? And I'd be like, I don't really care. Do you have a preference? And they'd be like, no. And I'd be like, okay, I'll go Friday morning. And then they'll be like, well, wouldn't it be better if you go on Saturday morning? And I would be like, well, I don't care. If you want me to go on Saturday morning, I can. And they would be like, well, no, I'm not saying I want you to go on Saturday morning. I'm just saying, like, wouldn't it be better for you? And you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, you're trying to get me to think that, but in their mind,
they've already decided.
And they're like, I'm doing what's best for you. I'm trying to help you figure out what's best for you. And like, what's best for me is to let me decide.
That's another part of gaslighting. Another part of gaslighting is making it seem like you can't function without that person. So, like, all your decisions have to go through that person. Like, oh, you lost a thing? You always lose things. Let me help you because you need me to do all these things for you because you can't function without me.
Yeah.
It sounds like she was delusional, like that she was in a delusion of her own making, rather than she was making herself feel that she was crazy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's so confusing. Like, it's confusing to talk about. And the thing is, like, the way that I realized that these are the situations that I was in is because my therapist would be like, well, you know, this experience that you have with Kristen is very similar to something that's happened with your mother. And I would be like, what? And she would be like, well, this, you know, you just said that you were like in a room and you were getting attention and that you could like see Kristen looking at you from across the room. And that's something that you told me just last week that your father said about your mother. Like if all of my parents' friends were like laughing at a story I would tell, my mom would look at me from across the room and I would shut up like that. I would shut up and I would get small. And I like hate it. I hate being in social situations now where I like don't know a lot of people. Like all this makes me really uncomfortable because I just don't want like, basically I don't want to shine. Like I don't want people to see how great I am because I don't want to take away from my mother's greatness. I don't want to take away from Kristen's greatness. Like I don't want to, that's kind of like who I became. And through learning all of this, through therapy and understanding PTSD and also at the same time understanding what was going on with the world, I was like, okay, I'm going to start speaking out about this stuff, right? And because I was speaking out about this stuff and I'm 2014, 2015, one of the few white girls who is speaking out about race, like a lot of other white girls were coming to me, which now I'm genderqueer, but I'm just trying to give you where I was at. Because it turns out I was always genderqueer. And hello. And that's the other thing. I also started dating someone who hated when I was feminine, which now I realize, like, as someone who feels very like, I'm mostly feel like a feminine boy, which is, you know, confusing to a lot of people, but I don't give a shit. Like, that's just what I feel like.
I saw that on your Instagram the other day. That I identify as femme boy. And I was like, I love it.
Yeah, that's exactly how I identify. But, like, dating someone who didn't want me to be feminine while also a mom who wanted me to wear dresses, like, woo, fucking with my head. But anyway, so I started to get a lot of white girls who were like, help me make my thing more inclusive. And I was like, fuck yes. You have a platform. You have 300,000 followers or whatever. Let me help you make this more inclusive. Like, you know, raising money for mental health, like bringing in, you know, queer women of color and trans women to like speak on a panel, like blah, blah, blah. And what happened 4 times in a row, like bang, bang, boom, with 4 totally different white girls, 4 totally different organizations. It was like, me telling them exactly what to do, and something happens within a week or something where one person, a trans woman, came to me and was like, this person you're working with has a history of abuse in the trans community in San Francisco. And so the girl who was working with him, I approached her and I was like, hey, this is not a safe person. And she was like, I just don't think he's like that, and just shut down the conversation. And I was like, oh, okay, so you're not actually trying to be inclusive. Like, you're still protecting yourself and, like, white girls and cis white dudes way more than you're protecting anyone else. And another thing happened where a comedian was really racist. And I was like, we should apologize to everyone on behalf of this comedian. And they were like, well, we don't want to throw her under the bus. And I'm like, okay, so you don't actually care. So all of this culminates to me getting very angry and then deciding I started managing Stevie, which is how we know each other.
Yeah.
I started managing Stevie just by a fluke. She was like, will you help me do this? Will you help me do this? Turns out I'm great at it.
Super good.
Yeah.
Nailing it.
And then I'm like, here's where I switch. Here's where I figure out what my career is. My career is making money for other people. My career is making money for queer black women, for queer, for black trans femmes, for like, my life is dedicated to making those people rich. And when I make them rich, then I'll get rich too. And that's now what I'm doing. And Jiminica, close friend and client, is an example of that. She's a queer black woman who's also polyamorous, who's one of the smartest people I've ever met in my fucking life, who should be more famous than anyone else. And I'm just like, you know, the amount of work that we've achieved over the last 6 months, if this is my comic book story, like, yeah, I'm a fucking superhero at getting her paid. Like,
it's true. It's real true.
Yes.
And it's great because, like, these clients that I have are so good for the world. Like, that's how the world is gonna change is by, first of all, like, fucking with money, like, changing the wealth distribution. That's the only way anything's gonna change.
Yes.
And that's what we're trying to make happen. And that's what I do with my clothing brand too. Like, we just did a huge photo shoot where
non-binary clothing, right?
yeah, it's gender neutral, and it's all brands who are non-binary owned, queer owned, black owned, person with disability owned. Like, they're all, any brand that you buy from on my site, you're directly supporting a business owner who's from a marginalized identity. And we are the people, like anyone with any marginalized identity, we're the people who can't fucking start a business with a marketing budget and a brick and mortar store on like 3rd and whatever in New York City. Like,
because where are you going to get the money?
Exactly. And like, you know, there's like a non-binary designer in New York, living in New York right now, who 6 months ago, I think, was just raising money on GoFundMe to escape an abusive household. And now we just did a huge campaign with 16 different models of different body types, skin tones, and styles who are wearing their product in a million different ways. It's like on this website with all these other brands. Like, it's doing what my superpower is, which is making money for people who deserve it.
Can people see that show? Is it online somewhere?
Or? We just shot the campaign. What, yesterday?
What's today?
What is today?
2 days
today
ago.
is
2 days ago.
Sunday.
2 days ago. Jiminico is one of my models, and also is.
I just sat around and ate.
Well, she doesn't have to do anything to look good, so she was like, "I'll just show up and put on a t-shirt when you want." But
all the snacks.
Exactly.
That's great.
Jiminica's one of my models, but it was like so great to be able to pay all the models who are on the shoot and to like have people come to the website and send money to all these like small business owners. And that's just, yeah, that's where it all came from. That's my story. That's my first booklet.
Yeah.
What's it called? Volume
1.
Volume 1.
Wow.
That's
beautiful. Thank you so much.
Jim, it's your turn.
Oh, okay. Where do I begin? So, my family is very interesting and secretive, and we'll get to all of these secrets because I found them out because I'm nosy. So, my mother was born and raised in Lubbock, Texas for most of her life. My grandmother married my grandfather when they were, I don't know, but people think I don't realize that my grandfather is not the same dad to all my aunts. Like, he's only the father of my youngest aunt. And no one ever told me, she told me in my older age. And I was like, she was like, they're my half sisters. And I was like, I can count, right? And she was like, wait, what? And I was like, right. So they moved to a lovely town of Riverside, California, because my grandfather was in the Air Force. They had no money, and there were 4 girls. Yep, 4 girls. My mother was the second oldest, and the oldest eventually passed away from lupus. So then there were 3 girls. They grew up very poor. Like, they did not have food in the sense of, like, if they didn't get, like, donations and food baskets, they didn't know how they were going to eat. And somehow they just kept fighting, and my grandmother became, like, the manager of Kmart. Same Kmart I worked at in high school.
Oh my God, cute.
Yeah, we'll get to that part. And he was working in the Air Force, like, long nights, and they would alternate. One would work in the daytime, one would work at night, just so someone would be home with the kids. Fast forward to my mother having me. She had me in her early 20s and was dating a pretty, like, shitty person that only my aunt, the one next to her in age, because they were like best friends, knew about. They would like sneak out and go party in like the neighboring town and just live their best lives. At one point, it became a physically abusive relationship, and he had broken her nose. Shit. And I'm not sure time-wise if she was pregnant with me or if she had already had me, but he broke her nose. They broke up. I must have already been born. So then Christmas time comes. I'm born in 87, so this is 1988. Christmas time comes. It is December 23rd. And he calls her and was like, can you bring Nikki over? My family calls me Nikki. I want to give her a Christmas present. So they go over to the house. We go over to the house, and they get into an argument in the kitchen. And he basically is like, if I can't have you, then no one can. And so they're going back and forth. And he had been known to be on drugs and be like a pimp and like all these things that you see in like movies that you're like, oh, pimp, a drug dealer, on all the things, shitty to women, very controlling. It was even at the point before this, like he would see my youngest aunt and be like, I saw her, and describe everything she had on in like a holding it. So my mom felt like she had to stay with him to keep everyone else safe. So back to, they're arguing in the kitchen. At some point, he grabs the frying pan off the stove and hits her. He repeatedly stabs her, floods the scene. The first responders come, they find me with her body. And so for me, like growing up after that, my grandparents raised me, thank goodness that I had them. The most amazing hot mess of humans that I've been blessed with. I remember growing up with my aunts, who were like my sisters. The youngest one, who is still jealous of me to this day. Like when I was born, she was graduating high school. I remember being like 7 or 8, and we would like fight. Like she would like push me, and I remember like kicking her in the back, like, don't put your hands on me. And I was just very angry because I was like, this is not right. You were like a real grown up.
Right.
Like, why are you so mad? And it was very interesting. So
she just jealous because you're the baby now?
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah, I took her shine.
Jeez.
Whoa.
And I was cute.
Yeah, well.
But I mean,
change.
I know I just get better with age. Thank you. Mm-hmm. But it was very interesting to grow up as seemingly an only child. As I got older, both my aunts had kids, and my oldest aunt, Roy, helped to raise me when my grandparents were working. So I would go and spend time with her. She would come pick me up, take me to school. I remember one morning I was at my house, and my aunts were arguing over what I was going to eat for breakfast. And I was so confused. But then it really looked like a scene out of the Cosby Show, which I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And they're like fighting in the hallway, and they're like on the ground, and my grandfather comes out and like trips over them. Oh. And I'm just sitting there eating cereal, just watching. Like, this, is this Lord. Real life? Like, it was such a mess. And the argument was over cereal or fruit. But at this point, I'm already eating cereal, so I really don't know what the hell the fight was about. Right. I'm like eating already, watching this nonsense. And I'm just so in awe of these humans that are fighting over what I'm going to eat when I'm already eating. So that's my younger age. I went to a private school, which was a mess. In kindergarten, I had like 3 hours of homework every day. And like my mom was like, we're not doing this. I had Spanish and sign language and history and blah, blah, blah. It was a mess. And I was learning how to play the piano, which I regret not continuing with. Mm. I then ended up in public school. And I saw, like, at that point, like, my grandparents were raising me. Like, my dad was working at Boeing, so he had money. Like, he was making, like, $100,000 a year. And she was, like, the manager of Kmart, and she had money. So it was, like, I never went without needing anything. Like, anything I needed. Like, my aunts would be like, we didn't fucking have any of this. This is, like, I'm so glad you have this. Mm-hmm. But it was very interesting to go to a public school, which was then predominantly Black and Hispanic, and leaving a predominantly white school, the private school, to go here. And it was just like a shock. And I was like, okay, whatever, cool. I got picked on a lot because I was always tallest. Long, skinny legs, which I still have long, skinny legs. I got breasts early, so that was a thing. I had big lips. And it's kind of like funny now because all the things that people used to make fun of, they're like, oh my God. Assets. And I'm like, yeah, you're welcome, bitch. And the middle school came, and then we moved to a more predominantly white area, which was, again, like another culture shock. It was like culture shock after culture shock. Yeah. Wow. And it was like, oh, okay, look at all these people, whatever. I met my best friend the first day of school, which is great. We met in band, because then I started playing saxophone. Yes. And I know. We had braces, because braces were in. Yeah. And it was interesting. Like, I was always the cool Black girl, which I always felt very awkward. But it was like other Black girls put me in that space because I just hung out with nerds. And I'm like, I don't understand. So there's a lot of confusion and a lot of like body things. And then I was around the white girls with a lot of money. So it was like the different types of people that kept like putting me in these boxes.
Wait, the black girls deemed you the cool black girl?
Mm-hmm, but then they didn't like me because I didn't fit in because I was too cool. I was too white.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So then the white girls, so it was very much like separated by race and different things. And then the white girls would be like, oh my God, can you come to our party? And I'd be like, no. I realized people were full of shit early on in life.
Yeah.
And even to the point where they'd be like, well, we uninvited some people to invite you. And I was like, well, bitch, I was never invited in the first place. Get out of here. What is this? That was around the time of like really realizing my body because it was brought up a lot. Like at that point, I think I had like solid D titties. Solid D at 12.
Oh, man.
Whoa.
Solid D. And I was very thin. But I played like sports. I played like volleyball and I was running and doing all these things. But then it became like a thing where people always talk about my body. Then it was like, well, you have a white girl body. Long, skinny, big breasts.
Oh, boy.
So it was a lot of, but this is also internal. So it was like a lot of mind fuckery even within my household. And so it was very tricky body-wise, like growing up, being like, okay, well, I have to keep this, which led to what? An eating disorder, because that's what happens.
So what did they want from you? They wanted...
You tell me. I still don't know to this day.
They just want to put you down.
Just want to, whatever.
Put you down.
It was a thing. So high school came, and that's when I started to just be confused, because then I was like, wait, that girl's kind of cute. And then I was like, oh no, what is this? And it was interesting because I definitely suppressed my attraction to women until my 20s, like my late 20s. Because also I would have like my grandmother, my mom being like, are you a lesbian? Because you don't ever like any of these boys. I'm like, they are stupid for one. Have you met teenage boys? Dumb. Who has time for that? But it'd be like, are you sure you're not a lesbian? Are you a lesbian? So it would be like, you're very skinny. Oh my God, are you wearing a bra? Your titties are so amazing. Like, are you a lesbian? So it was like a cycle of what the fuck and confusion. And then I was an emo kid because why not? And so it was just a lot of things and a lot of different people putting their ideals on me where I felt like I couldn't find myself. So it was like a cycle. And then I went to college. Before I got to college, I met my first boyfriend at Kmart when I started working there. He was older than I was, and he was very sweet. And he had a large Buddha tattoo.
That is not what I expected her to say.
And he had curly hair that was always in his face. And he was just the sweetest human, like just sweet. But he was like, we should get married. I said, I am 17. I'm going to college. And that's going to be a no. And then I got to college. And it was another culture shock of like more black people. Because then I've been around so many not black people. And it's just like all black people. But then I was attractive. I wasn't attractive until I got to college. So then I was like, oh my God, everyone wants me. What do I do? I slept with a new person every quarter. That's what I did.
Every quarter.
3 months, you're in, you're out. Thank you so much. But for me, like, it was so interesting because I was already practicing like my consent and being like, no, I'm not doing this. No, not doing that. And we would talk about things. And I think I started to realize like how I could feel for more than one person at a time. Hence polyamorous now.
With women then in college?
No.
In the quarters? No, okay.
Nope. Still very intrigued. Had lots of lesbian friends. And I was like, let's see what's happening here. I'm really intrigued. How'd I get into this? But still no. Still very oppressed and still dealing with it. And also like talking about LGBTQIA stuff in the Black community is very not talked about. Or it's like looked at as like a negative thing. So it was like a lot of like oppression of like figuring shit out. But I started to feel like, okay, I went to school for criminal justice because I watch a lot of SVU. Yeah.
I just watched 2 episodes with my host last night because they're super into it. I'd never watched it before.
So intense.
Oh, wow.
It's very
what
intense.
a show.
But I was like, why is the acting so bad?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Hold
Do you
your
defend?
tongue.
Okay, all right.
I mean, I haven't watched it in years. I feel fine.
Yeah, I haven't watched it in years either. I was obsessed with it when I lived in New York in like 2011.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well,
no.
I mean, for me, it was like I wanted to help women because I didn't want them to be in the same space that my mom was in. And I was just like, this is the only way I can do it. Like, I have to do this. So I did criminal justice. And I partied and did all these things. Here's what had happened, though. I didn't go to class. And so when you don't go to class, they kick your ass out.
Right.
And I was like, oh, no. That's crazy. So,
which is so funny because you're paying them. So honestly, like, why would you?
The disrespect.
I paid you for this class. Why do I have to go?
It was an option.
Anyway.
Right before I got kicked out, though, I was staying at an off-campus apartment with some friends, and these people turned out to be shitty humans that weren't my friends. And I was sleeping one night, and I woke up to someone standing over me naked. And it was someone I had dated before, and someone else had let him in with one of his friends. And I guess they thought I knew, but I didn't. And I woke up and I froze. And that was when I was sexually assaulted. Like, people always think, like, oh, you, like, were out and blah, blah. I was like, no, bitch, I was 3 dreams in. And I woke up because I felt someone over me, which then kind of changed the course of my work. And so I got kicked out of school, and I was like, whatever. I opened a clothing store, because that's apparently what you do. I opened a vintage clothing store for 2 years.
Yeah.
I'm a Gemini. I don't know. And then I became a rape crisis counselor. And it was just all donation time, like, not paid. And it was the most humbling and giving thing I've ever done in my life. And I was like, this is it. Like, I don't understand how I can do anything else. From there, I went back to school and finished my bachelor's in psychology. While I was in school, though, I worked in different mental health spaces. It was like 2 years in each space because I was like, I need to know everything. I want to be so well-rounded. So I worked 2 years with juvenile sex offenders, which for me, I was like, this is a population. We had 11 houses, 6 boys in each house, and they were never empty.
Oh.
Never empty. And I was just like, what the mindfuck? And then I worked in a residential facility for teenagers where it was just all genders and like all together. And it was like a cycle of different forms of trauma. And what kept coming back in the different spaces I worked was sexual assault. From there, I worked in eating disorders, sexual assault. A lot of trauma, safety was, I'm going to overeat. I'm not going to eat because then I won't be attractive. So led to deep eating disorders, which is interesting because my eating disorder came back after my trauma. I was an easy restrictor. Easy. Because then I would just drink. And then my drinking got really bad to the point where I would carry a bar in my trunk. Like, I was like, mixers, cups, bottle, here we go. And I figured it out, like, all the things as I was, like, going through all the work. And I stopped partying at, like, 26. And I was like, oh, I'm tired. I've done all this. And I went spiritual. I was like, how? I went in for, like, a reading because I was dating this guy who was fucking terrible to the point where I was like, this is not me. He was like, have you ever heard of Herbalife? I was like, I'm sorry, what? He was like, Herbalife, you could lose a little weight.
No.
I was like fucking like 30 pounds less than I am now, and I love my body now. And I was just like, what?
Also, isn't Herbalife a pyramid scheme?
I mean, yes, but I did have some. It did work.
Oh.
Really?
Worked. That's interesting.
Yep, see? So, I still have ED brain. Yeah, it's a thing. I was doing all these things and working in all these spaces of different types of mental illness. So I had, at this point, it's almost a decade of just working in mental health spaces. And I get burned out because I'm so deep into it because I'm an empath and I feel everything. And I'm like, oh, gosh, okay. So I would take breaks in between jobs and, like, be a nanny. Because I was like, babies, healing.
Yeah.
There's a term for that, the burnout, the advocate burnout, right?
Oh, yeah. I don't know the exact term, but it was fucking real.
Yeah.
And then I would do, like, weddings. I would, like, help create weddings for people. So it was like, happiness.
Joy.
Wow. Go back to sad stuff. Happiness. So at one point, I'm working at a facility in Malibu. My first job in Malibu.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And one day, I'm just like, I can't do this. Like, this is unfulfilling. I'm doing my boss's job. She's calling in drunk, telling us how shitty of a boss she is. I'm having meetings with her bosses because I was like, I'm not doing this. And they're like, oh, that sounds crazy. No one's doing anything, so I quit. which is so funny because this is how I met Dan. I was like, I found an ad as I was like, okay, I'm going to do sex ed. Let me figure it out. I started going to conferences. I found an ad to be a sexual educator for teenagers. As I'm leaving a conference, I apply, whatever, I get in, and I get to the training late. I walk into the training, and there's only one seat open. And I'm like, oh, I guess I'll sit there. That person looks cool. So I sit next to Dan, and we became like instant friends. We were like writing notes. We were talking. We were getting in trouble.
We got in trouble, yeah.
It's just the best.
It was great.
And then I was like, so you like want to be friends? Dan was like, yes, I've been waiting for you to ask me.
Yeah. I was.
And then I was like, do you want to come hang out at my house? Yes. I was like, I know one vegan place by my house. I'll take you there.
I drove all the way to Culver City for you.
Yeah.
That's how you know it's real.
Oh, I understand that's a big deal out here.
Yes, that's a large deal.
Traveling.
That's a large deal.
Traveling for love.
So we were in a long distance relationship.
Yeah. And then it was like to the point
No. That's a middle distance relationship.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. I have long distance ones.
Yeah, you have real long distance ones. You've like, yeah.
So I go to all these conferences and I'm trying to figure out my path. And like, I want to do sex ed, like all this stuff. But I'm like, but there's something missing. Like, I love the mental health aspect. And I was like, oh, well, I have to be a sex therapist, clearly.
Oh, yeah.
So I put myself in grad school. I do marriage and family therapy almost until the end. And then I'm like, I don't want to be a therapist. I quit. My family's like, what? Oh, shit. I'm sorry, what? And I was like, yeah, I don't want to be a therapist. So anyway, my family's so confused. And I'm like, that makes sense. And so I know all the therapy things, but I didn't finish. And I'm like, I just want to do sex ed and help. Because my whole thing is I feel like if we have these conversations younger and we're teaching people, then boys know how to get rejected, or girls know how to get rejected, or non-binary people or trans people know how to get rejected so it doesn't lead to violence.
Yes.
And so that's what I've been doing. And it's been amazing and scary, and so scary and amazing, but scary. Like literally, like I was working at another job this past year in a facility where I thought was amazing. And it was the first time I experienced racism in a job. And it was a residential facility for trauma survivors. And one of my coworkers was just saying like little things like, you know, my family only wants to live around white people. And I was like, oh, okay, that's weird. And then
microaggression style.
Yo, so many. I cut my hair and she's like, oh my God, you look like such a lesbian now. I was like,
okay.
What do lesbians look like? I know plenty. They look all different to me. I don't know.
Different ways.
Yeah, all different.
It was just a lot. And it came to the end of her walking up to me and saying like, oh my God, your tits are so big. Like I can't stop staring at them.
No.
And in my mind, I was like, first of all, this is sexual harassment.
Plus sexual harassment?
Yeah,
like,
seriously.
Like, wow.
Mind you, this is a house with sexual assault survivors.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay, well, here we go. And then the whole time I worked there, I had to code switch. So code switching, like I had to change my voice and make sure I'm only saying certain things that I didn't have to explain myself.
For respectability politics reasons.
Mm-hmm. And like safety.
Yeah.
Like it's like a thing, right? Being a Black queer woman, you have to adjust, or do you?
Right.
And so I stopped adjusting.
Yes.
But also it was like I didn't want to be that angry Black woman because there were no other Black women that worked there. There's no other women of color. And there were like some biracial people, but were passing in the sense that they just looked white if you didn't know. And I was just like, I'm going to lose my shit. And old Jim is coming back and I'm gonna just beat her up. And I was like, can't do that. So like she got fired, long time coming, but also like a lot of just because I chose not to be a therapist, no one would teach me anything. And they would just disregard me. And I'm like, you do understand I've been doing this a decade and you will teach these people that just got out of school like the other day and are like 23. Okay, cool. So I left. And I really was like, Dan was like, leave, quit the job.
Oh, I've been saying it for months.
Dan said it when I started in January. So,
because Jiminica will text me and be like, this happened today. And I'm like, no, you have to leave.
Right, because
like,
she's telling you about abuse. And you're like, friend, I love you.
Toxic environment.
Leave.
And also it's like that kind of gaslighting, particularly when a Black woman is like bringing something to the attention of at least majority white staff. Everyone's like, you don't have to make a big deal out of it. Like, it's a different form of, aka the same form of gaslighting, where it turns the situation around on you. Like, you bringing up your own safety is making a big deal and making it uncomfortable for everyone else, when really it is not hard to, like, not be racist. Like, it really isn't.
It's really easy.
It's like extremely easy. So Jiminica's telling me this, and I'm like, no, like,
Get the fuck out.
I know. And it's like, it's also funny because I'm like her manager. We had just started working together. And so her family's like, what are you doing? But also her manager is like, what are you doing? Like, what do you want to be doing? She's like, I want to be a therapist. No, I don't. I want to teach. Actually, I hate teaching.
That was the best. That was my favorite day ever. Dan was like, okay, let's have a meeting. I was like, yeah, so I don't want to teach anymore. Dan, like, threw papers in the air, was like, then what the fuck are we doing here?
Oh, shit. I was like, I had my little list. I was like, okay, so we can start getting you workshops at Babeland. We can get you I was like, here are all the ways to make you a teacher. And she was like, I don't want to be a teacher. She was like, I don't want to be a teacher, but I do want to teach. And I was like,
wait a minute.
She said to my face, and she was like, here's what I like. I was like, all right, talk to me about what your favorite part is. She was like, I want to be having the conversations that need to be had, which this is a great Jiminica impression. I don't know if you noticed, but she's like, I want to be having the conversations that need to be had. And I was like, okay, so, and my like little producer, like manager brain, I'm like, what if we start a podcast series? And she's like, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. Yeah. And I was like, well, let's do that. And then, we take like a week away or whatever, and we come back and we just come up with the idea for Trauma Queen. And within 2 months, it's like on the air. The first season is out, and we just recorded the second season. It's all about gaslighting. And like mid-December, season 2 of Trauma Queen will be out. And it's just like, both of our experiences, and then both of us being like so adamant about understanding communication and being really passionate about these subjects, especially like assault and abuse and communication and having conversations. It was like a perfect fit, a perfect match, and we both are willing to work really hard on it. And now, not only, this is the even funnier part, is like Jiminica being like, I want to teach, but I don't want to be a teacher.
I don't want to talk at people. I want to talk to people.
Right.
Dan was like, okay.
And now it's like, I don't want to be a teacher, but I do want to teach. And now we've started going to colleges. She goes to colleges, and she'll do like an hour and a half talk and do like workshops with the kids in the...
But I get to talk to them.
Exactly.
Yeah. And not at them.
Yeah.
And talk with them. And it's been so amazing. And I'm still very much in awe. Like, I just went to a school last week, and they were like, you're famous. And I was like, who is, girl? No, I'm not. They're like, oh my God, you're so famous. And I'm like, thank you for these snacks. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks for the snacks.
I got her little rider.
It's
like
my rider was
hummus,
amazing.
Gummy bears, sparkling water.
It's
like,
all my favorite things.
All the things you want.
That's so good.
But that's how I got here. Like, literally, like, trial and error and stepping out of my comfort zone and allowing people to love me.
Chad Michael Snavely has edited every horizontal episode since the beginning of season 2. He's a podcast impresario, and you can find his whole body of work on chadmichael.com. Alan Markley composed the intro music, and he's busy being a rock star on Instagram as Plastic Cannons. Shauna Shea created my saucy cover art, and you can hire her on 99 Designs. Next week's episode, part 2 of my conversation with Dan and Jiminica, in which we dig into their relationship with each other, is available exclusively to patrons of the Horizontal Arts. Remember that if you'd like access to the full Horizontal for $5 a month, you'll need to become a patron before April 12th, which is next Friday. And if you become a $10 a month patron before the end of April, I'll send you a handwritten thank you love note in my glorious handwriting, plus a bit of horizontal swag. Until next week, may you have someone or someones to love, something to do, and so many things to look forward to. Thank you for getting horizontal.
Oh, did I tell you we're supposed to tell stories
No.
to each other?
The fuck? You didn't tell me anything.
Well, because I tried to think of a story that you don't know about me and I couldn't come up with one.
You didn't even give me a chance to make up a story.
I know.
What kind of
Not makeup.
Not makeup.
I know, but I like to be prepared.
Tell each other a story we don't know about each other.
Well,
which
I mean, that'll
one?
be at the end, so...
Yeah, so now
Let's
we have
have
the
a
whole
little-
time
Like,
to
is this
think.
a sex story?
A sex lover relationship of any kind story. So it could be a family story, it could be a friend story, it could be a sex story,
Interesting.
it could be a raunchy story, it could be anything.
I'll do dirty.
Well, then now I have to do dirty.
You don't have to be a follower. You can live your own life. You can have a wholesome ass story if you want.